welcome to the Bit Beacon broadcast. Today we have for you episode 086. It's June 10th, 2025. You can call me Kodax and I'll be your host through this week's broadcast. So this past week, the Nintendo Switch 2 finally came out. I picked up the console itself. I've had, in fact, a few consoles. Got one for Ravenheart, and I also picked up a copy, my only physical game for Switch 2 so far, Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. This is the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, and this is published and developed, published by Marvelous. I'm not sure if they developed it in-house or partnered with another studio, but this is one of the few launch games to actually come complete on cartridge. This is not a game key card like so many other third-party publishers' games are on Nintendo Switch 2. So I'm happy to support Marvelous. I'm glad they were there at launch with a game for the Nintendo Switch 2. So what about the actual hardware? What do I think of the Nintendo Switch 2? It's a really nice piece of tech. It feels really good. As I mentioned in my preview earlier this year when I went to the Nintendo Switch 2 experience in LA, it's got a really nice finish to, the physical feeling of the console is really nice. It's heavy, but also light. It's it's surprisingly light for what it's packing, but it doesn't feel so light that it's super cheap. I haven't honestly had a huge amount of time to play anything on it. I've been so busy with events this past week. The thought that it's only not even been a week since it came out, it feels like a really long time ago. The only thing I've really played on it so far, and I talked about how I was playing Fantasy Life I on my PS5. Well, I broke down and I bought it again for Nintendo Switch and got the Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade. And you can transfer your save from PS5 to Switch and back and forth and on PC and all kinds of places. So I was able to just download that game, download my save file, and continue playing right where I left off. I've been playing it in just kind of short bursts when I've had time, and I've really been enjoying it. The game plays incredibly well on the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm pretty sure it's 60 frames per second, just like it is on PS5. Image quality is, of course, not quite as crisp, but it looks really good to me, far better and beyond the image quality that, I'd see if I was playing on the regular Nintendo Switch. So the Nintendo Switch 2, it has Joy-Cons just like the original game did. And I've been using those primarily when I've been playing. I've mostly been playing in handheld because I've kind of been out and about, moving around, not at home. So I've been breaking it out when I've got 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes to play with it. And it does feel really good. I like how they are bigger. One thing I've noticed is that the Joy-Cons don't feel super precise, like with the thumbstick directional inputs. There's some mini games in Fantasy Life where you kind of have to swing the thumbstick around to try to find like a weak spot. Like while I'm fishing, I gotta like hold the thumbstick in a certain direction and kind of yank the fish, if that makes any sense. And there is an issue where I'll have it like perfectly at a 90-degree angle, kind of like all the way over to the side, and it'll look slightly like I'm like pushing the stick down, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I do think there is a way to calibrate the thumbsticks, just like there was on the original Nintendo Switch, so I might need to do that for the Joy-Cons, out of the box. Maybe they're not perfectly aligned with the console they came bundled with. So I think I'm going to try giving that a shot and see if that makes anything better. Now the screen is really nice, considering it's not, an OLED screen, it's just an LCD, but it looks pretty good. I noticed that even on max brightness, if I'm outside and trying to use it, it's kind of hard to see depending on like what's going on the screen. Like if I'm looking at like a dark background, even at max brightness, or a dark screen image, like if my character's like walking around a cave or something, and I've got max brightness on, but I'm outside and I've got the glare of, the sun and the clouds and all that kind of going on. I noticed like it's kind of challenging to see. So the brightness is, I think, intentionally capped kind of lower than you might expect, because the battery life takes a hit the higher that the screen brightness is. And so I'm only seeing about 2 hours of actual gameplay before the Switch dies if you have the screen at max brightness. So I guess that's not too bad. It puts it on about par with where the original Nintendo Switch was. I do need to play around a little bit with having it maybe at like really low brightness or all the way to the bottom um, of the brightness scale. So we'll see if that, gives me an extra 20, 30, 40, maybe even another hour. I have no idea. But, this is a much more powerful console. It's putting out higher frames per second on the screen. It can do up to 120 frames per second, 1080p image when you're playing portably. So it makes sense that it's not going to hold a battery for an incredibly long time. I don't like to think of the Nintendo Switch 2 as a handheld console. Like, it's not a Game Boy, it's not a DS, it's not a PlayStation Vita. It's a home console that you can take with you. And so I think, I see a lot of people complaining, why is it so big? I can't fit it in my pocket. Well, it's because it's not meant to be a 3DS replacement. It's meant to be a hybrid, portable home console that you can take with you. And I know a lot of people favor playing in handheld mode, and I totally get that. That's kind of me a lot of the time as well. But I think we just need to accept that this is not a true portable console. It's a home console that you can take anywhere with you. So battery life, yeah, it's not the best. I was able to pretty quickly recharge it with my external battery, and you can play with it plugged into an external battery, and it seems to stop it from like draining. It'll just kind of break even, maybe even charge a little bit depending on the speed of your charger. So yeah, Nintendo Switch 2, eager to spend more time with it. There's just so much going on in my life right now, and I just haven't had as much time as I'd like to spend to put into it. But hopefully in the next couple weeks I'll be able to get some quality time with it and report back more of my findings for all of you. So there's been a lot of events this past week, and we're going to be talking about quite a bit of that. But real quickly, I just wanted to give you a preview, kind of what's next. Where am I going next? As usual, in early July, Anime Expo is here. There's not a huge gaming presence this year, it feels like, in terms of special guests and things like that. So I am still going to go, but I'm going to try to limit the amount of time I'm actually there. Usually I'm there from sunrise to sunset and even earlier and later sometimes. So this year I'm really going to try to maybe only go 2 of the days. Probably going to end up being there 3 of the 4 days, but if I can make it so I'm only there 2, that would be even better. Or if I go a 3rd day, I might just go for a couple hours just to do a couple signings that I have tickets for. But yeah, I think it's going to be more of a low-key year gaming-wise for me at Anime Expo. So I'm not as totally thrilled. I was honestly kind of hoping not to go, but a couple things did come up that I was able to get into. So I did end up caving and getting tickets for that. And then, of course, at the end of July, or near the end of July, we have San Diego Comic-Con. And there's really not a whole lot we know about San Diego Comic-Con yet. When I was at the Nintendo store in San Francisco, I was talking to a Nintendo employee, and he let slip that they would not be at San Diego Comic-Con this year. I don't know if that's a spoiler, if that person can get in trouble, but there's really no way to name and shame them. So yeah, they won't be at San Diego Comic-Con, which is kind of a bummer. I was really thinking they would go big and go hard there this year because of the Nintendo Switch 2, but they are opting to either do their own events or appear elsewhere. I don't know. But one day I hope for their return at San Diego, because they used to throw a really good time there with the Nintendo Lounge. I really do miss that. So last week we had the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2. We had IGN Live. We had Summer Games Fest. We had the Death Stranding game premiere event in LA. But there was more to be announced. Oh, and also we have the Xbox Showcase, which we knew about. But PlayStation, out of nowhere, on Tuesday, June 3rd, announced that they would be broadcasting a new State of Play announcement stream the very next day on June 4th. Pretty ballsy to do it one day before the Nintendo Switch 2 launch, but let's dive in and take a look at some of the new announcements. First up, we had the announcement for Bloodstained: The Scarlet Engagement. The Bloodstained series is helmed by former Konami developers who worked on the Castlevania series and who departed the company after Konami was seemingly no longer interested in making traditional Castlevania games. Their first game, Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night, was a Kickstarter project that was met with record-breaking funding and ultimately critical acclaim upon its release. This new game in the series is similar to that first in that it's a traditional side-scrolling game. These games use 3D character models and environments as opposed to retro-styled 2D graphics with pixels. The game features 2 new protagonists, Leo and Alex, as they explore a massive ethereal castle, and players will have the ability to swap between the 2 characters at any time to tackle the challenges within. The game launches sometime in 2026. Next up is Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles. This long-rumored in-development remaster/remake is finally here. Originally released in 1997 for the PlayStation 1, this tactical strategy game has become one of the most beloved spin-off entries in the Final Fantasy series, and having played a role in shaping the story of mainline Final Fantasy games, such as Final Fantasy XII, which shares a world with Final Fantasy Tactics. This new version of the game contains some new features such as an updated but still retro-inspired graphics, a new optimized UI experience, full voice acting, and a new lower, more accessible difficulty mode. For those of you preferring something more closely resembling the original experience, you can play the game with the original graphics and gameplay and what they are referring to as Classic Mode. This Classic Mode does use the translation featured in the PSP port of the game known as War of the Lions. The game launches on September 30th on all platforms, including Nintendo Switch 2 digitally, and in the West physically on PlayStation 5 and on Nintendo Switch. An upgrade path for the Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game will be available. So you can buy the physical copy of the Nintendo Switch version, and then through the eShop, get an upgrade pack essentially to enable it to play with the added features that Nintendo Switch 2 offers. Next game, from the creators of the storied Hitman series, comes a new licensed title, 007 First Light. That's right, we are getting a new Bond game for the first time in more than a decade. This game was previously announced a couple of years ago, but we are just now getting our first look at the footage. This isn't your grandma's James Bond, though. This is his origin story. This quote from the PlayStation blog sums it up nicely. In 007 First Light, at only 26 years old, he isn't the fully fledged 007 you know from the Tux and Martini days, but a man with sharp instincts, sometimes reckless, who is still learning when to fight, when to bluff, and when to disappear into the shadows. In this game, you will meet Bond as a Navy air crewman. When an act of bravery catches the eyes of MI6, he is brought into their training program. Rather than going for photorealism, the game sports a slightly stylized look, which I think will give it a unique identity. The trailer gives off major Uncharted vibes to me, which I'm all for. It's been too long since we've had a game like this with those kinds of production values. The one thing I'm not totally sold on, though, is the look of James. He reminds me of a young Tom Cruise for some reason, the look they went with. It just feels wrong in the world of Bond to see what I see as Tom Cruise, and I'm not really sure I can unsee it. The game launches sometime in 2026 and will release on all major platforms, including Nintendo Switch 2, and will be optimized especially for PlayStation 5 Pro. Originally announced back in 2020 as part of the PlayStation 5 reveal showcase, after multiple delays, Pragmata is finally back in the spotlight. This science fiction adventure game has been something of a mystery, but we finally got our first look at its unique gameplay. Pragmata is set on a lunar research station, and players will control protagonist Hugh and his android companion Diana, who hangs onto his back throughout the game as they team up to defeat the rogue AI who is controlling the station and doing everything in its power to keep Hugh from leaving. This is a third-person, over-the-shoulder adventure game, so this type of game is really right up my alley. This might be the game that intrigued me the most from those shown at the State of Play, and I recommend taking a look at the trailer. Pragmata will launch on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series consoles, and PC in 2026. Romeo is a Dead Man is the new game from the creative mind behind the No More Heroes series, Suda51. In Romeo is a Dead Man, players will take the role of FBI Special Agent Romeo Stargazer as he hunts criminals across space-time. As with all of Suda51's games, things look really bloody, crazy, and out there, and it's very apparent that this game has finally been given a massive budget. Like, this is Suda's first game that looks like some kind of AAA stuff. Like, normally his games have kind of a low-budget look that's distinct and unique, and I appreciate that, but he really, it looks leagues beyond anything he's made before, at least in the visual department. It does bear some gameplay similarities to No More Heroes, and it certainly appears to have served as sort of a base for this game, but it looks to the extreme of No More Heroes in every other way. Romeo is a Dead Man launches in 2026 for PS5, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. The last game I'm going to talk about from the State of Play is Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. Warner Brothers Games, NetherRealm Studios, and developer Digital Eclipse are bringing the largest ever collection of Mortal Kombat games in one singular SKU. Digital Eclipse is known for putting together some of the nicest retro game collection packages out there, with things like playable and interactive timelines, archive quality scans of development materials, and never before seen behind the scenes videos, and often a full-length documentary included as part of the game. While we didn't get many details about the presentation, we can certainly take some hints from the trailer that it will probably be of a quality similar to their other games. Digital Eclipse's games, that is. The trailer features both of Mortal Kombat creators John Tobias and Ed Boon, and promises multiple game versions of different games, including things like Game Boy and Game Gear titles that have been mostly forgotten. I know if Ravenheart were here, he would be gushing about this title, so I hope he's out there smiling, knowing that it's coming to all major platforms, including Nintendo Switch 2, later this year. So, on June 5th, Thursday, June 5th, 2025, the Nintendo Switch 2 finally arrived on store shelves, or at least briefly they were, before they immediately sold out everywhere. While I had some online orders coming my way, I wanted to partake in the launch of the console in the only way I seemingly know how. As I did with both the Wii U, the PS4, I camped out at a Target. Well, camp out's a bit of a stretch because I got there at 4 a.m. One of my local Targets was hosting a special launch event, which included some giveaways, so you know me, I love my event promo items, I had to be there. When I arrived at 4 a.m., there were only two others in line, but quickly a third person arrived. Let's call him Jeff. Jeff was one of those guys you kind of dread to meet in a line when you're going to be stuck next to them for the next 4 hours. While I was worried at first, Jeff quickly became a source of entertainment for myself and the others near the front of the line. You see, Jeff is not somebody you would describe as a conventionally attractive person. He's your average, older, overweight white guy. But for some reason, he was fluent-ish in Vietnamese, and really passionate about Vietnam for a reason we couldn't totally fathom at first. Funny coincidence. Most of the Switch 2 sold in the US were manufactured in Vietnam. Oh, and the first 5 people in line were also Vietnamese due to the area I was in. Perhaps this is why Jeff couldn't help but bring up his passion for Vietnam. The conversation took a turn when Jeff told us that he had been to Vietnam 11 times. I asked him, "Why, Jeff? Why so many times have you been to Vietnam?" And he told us that he goes there looking for his wife. And that makes a lot of sense, I thought. Jeff probably has to go out of his way to find a wife in that kind of a way. Then out of the blue, he hits us with a crazy fact about himself. Jeff once gave a Vietnamese woman a Nintendo Switch Lite and $300 so he could partake in intercourse with her. Immediately, we are all dying of shock and laughter. This guy's being completely straight with us. He then tells us that he's headed to Europe next to try his luck again at finding a wife. Jeff then tells us about his thieving days, where he would steal from all kinds of stores, grocery stores, Targets, Walmarts, you name it. But he insists those days are long behind him. In fact, he blames one of his former Vietnamese friends for getting him down that path. The final major thing we learn about Jeff is that he got banned from his local library because he would borrow games and never return them. After he got banned, he enlisted close to 20 other people to get a library card and borrow games for him, which he then also never returned. This guy is some kind of a crazy kleptomaniac, or at least reformed, according to him. Again, he insisted he doesn't do that anymore, and to prove it, he pulled out a fat wad of cash from his pocket and said, "Look, I have money, I don't need to steal." Case closed, that's enough evidence for me. Okay, enough about Jeff. How was the Target experience? I was actually impressed. It was very well organized with clear signage telling people where to line up. Around 6:30 a.m., staff came out to start handing out tickets which guaranteed a purchase during the first hour of the store opening. And they continued to periodically hand out tickets when new people joined the line. Then at 8 a.m., they let 5 of us into the store, where we first stopped by the giveaway table where they had Mario Kart World keychains, sticker sheets, and a nice Nintendo Switch 2 tote bag. After that, I made my way over to the checkout counter, where I picked up my Switch 2. The whole thing was smooth and painless, and I appreciate this particular Target for handling it so well. And a special shout out to Jeff for the memories. I will never forget that morning. As I said earlier, the PlayStation State of Play wasn't the only place to find new game announcements last week. Jeff Keighley had his annual Summer Games Fest showcase at the YouTube Theater in Los Angeles, and Xbox hosted its own game showcase on Sunday morning via YouTube and Twitch. So rather than go through all the individual announcements at each of these shows, I'm just going to pick a few notable highlights. Otherwise, this episode is going to go on for way too long, and my voice is starting to give out. First up, let's take a look at possibly the biggest announcement of the entire week. Xbox formally announced their rumored partnership with Asus to deliver an Xbox-branded handheld PC, which will launch in 2 models, called the Xbox Ally and a more premium model, the Xbox Ally X. This handheld Windows PC will have a custom user interface to seamlessly allow for switching between PC storefronts and launchers such as Steam, the Epic Game Store, Battle.net, and more. These new Xbox devices are not really Xbox consoles. You won't be able to play any of your Xbox console exclusive games, only those that are available as part of the Xbox PC storefront, and possibly as part of Xbox Game Pass. These new devices sport a very similar spec to the Asus 2024 handheld PC, the Ally X and the Ally, hence why the names are so similar. The only thing different about these Xbox branded devices are the stylings of the system and the custom operating system skin. Last year's Asus Ally X cost a whopping $800, so you can likely expect that price to hold if not increase for the Xbox branded version of the device, which releases late this year. Now let's move back to the games. Game Freak, the makers of Pokemon, announced a brand new game at the Xbox Showcase. Yes, you heard that right. It's not a Pokemon game, but instead a brand new intellectual property which looks visually stunning and decidedly AAA. The game is titled Beast of Reincarnation. Here's the official pitch for the game. In post-apocalyptic Japan, a land ruined by corruption and crawling with monstrous beasts, humanity's last hope may rest with Emma, an outcast cursed as a blighted one, and Ku, her loyal canine companion. Survive a journey across an ominous, ever-changing world where dangerous forests can erupt in the wasteland. As Emma and Ku push deeper into the unknown, their bond strengthens, and with it, strange powers bloom. Explore what it means to be human in Beast of Reincarnation, an expansive one-person, one-dog action RPG built around demanding technical combat. The game features realistic graphics and features fast-paced action combat. The protagonist, Emma, wields a katana and performs all kinds of impossible acrobatic-esque combat moves against monsters and large mechanical beings. Beast of Reincarnation launches in 2026 for PC, Xbox, PS5, and not Nintendo Switch 2, at least not yet. The game was running kind of poorly in this, teaser trailer, so I suspect they have a lot of work to do to get the game up to something like 60 frames per second on some of these consoles and PC. So I think they might struggle to put something like this out on Nintendo Switch 2 anytime soon. Over at Summer Games Fest, the big announcement was the next major Resident Evil game, Resident Evil Requiem, aka Resident Evil 9. Not much was shown beyond a short trailer which sets up the events of the game, which will seemingly take place in the ruins of Raccoon City, which was nuked during the events of Resident Evil 3. The protagonist of the game appears to be a new character, Grace Ashcroft, the daughter of a character from the spin-off title released in 2003, I guess is how I should say that, Resident Evil Outbreak. Grace is an analyst at the FBI and is now being tasked with investigating the events of her mother's death, which occurred 8 years prior. Some are speculating that the game may be open world or take place entirely within the hotel that Grace must go to for her investigation. We also don't know if the game will be third person or first person either. Recent games have been, a mixture of both. Summer Games Fest host Jeff Keighley said that the game will be a bold shift in tone and gameplay from previous entries in the franchise, which is both exciting and scary, just like a Resident Evil game. Capcom hasn't cleared much up beyond the game's February 27 launch date, where it will be available on most major consoles and platforms. Switch 2, we don't know yet. But what about those other events you attended? Fear not. Next week, I will talk about my experience at IGN Live and at the Death Stranding 2 World Tour game premiere event. But for now, end transmission.